Here we are 3/4 of the way through the year, and I did not pace myself well. My goal was to slow down the amount of books that I was reading so that I could really enjoy different aspects of life and explore new things. And I've already passed my goal. But if you're new here, my name is Jennifer from Watkins Through Life, and I am doing a challenge this year where every move I make and every book I read is adventurous. It is time for a good old-fashioned book review update. I'll be going through the books that I've read since the last one and giving you my review as well as if I would recommend you read them or not. I'm not going to do a plot summary for them. I feel like you could easily look that up on Goodreads, and I don't want to accidentally spoil anything for you, so I'll just give you my recommendations. The first one I want to talk about is The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. This book is narrated in a fun stream of consciousness style that jumps around events like a bard using Dimension Door. But it was really fun and somehow still cohesive. My favorite part of this book is that there were a lot of unique magical abilities and spells that were very clever. This book definitely contains every form of adult content though, and is not for the conservative reader. The next 3 books are a series, The Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, and Bands of Mourning by Brandon Sanderson. I cannot believe it took me this long to read them. My husband kept recommending them, and I was just so concerned that they were going to be a Western trope. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that Western is not my favorite. It's kind of a turnoff for me. And while each book does start out with a flashback to Wax's previous life at the Roughs, it then very quickly goes back into city life, and Sanderson's characters and banter just sail you right through the Western aspect. I am a sucker for the emotional suffering of characters, and Sanderson definitely put Wax through the ringer in these books, so I devoured them the moment I started them. I know that the 4th book is coming out relatively soon, and I cannot wait to read that as well. The next book that I read is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. And this is the beginning of me stretching the definition of adventure. But before I tell you why, let me just say that I loved this book. I was entirely lost in the characters and had no idea who the murderer was. Stuart Turton really commits to having the reader in the dark along with the protagonist throughout the whole story, and it is a wild ride. And if you don't like spoilers, skip ahead like 15 seconds while I explain why it technically is an adventure book. Basically, I chose to count this in the end because the main character chose to leave his everyday life for what is ultimately a simulation on repeat in his brain while he's in search of revenge. And although you don't necessarily discover that's the case until the literal last few pages of the book, I still think that overall the character's journey is an adventure. My second stretching of the definition is The Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov. I have no excuse for this. I thought it would be more of an adventure, but it's really just a futuristic cop show. So sorry. I guess the adventure was really just me exploring a futuristic world. But other than that misconception about the book, I really enjoyed it. The book was paced quickly enough to where I never got bored, and the crime was put forward in a way that didn't make the culprit immediately obvious. So all around it was a good book. Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft was a really fun book. I liked it, I really did. I just wish that he wasn't a bumbling idiot for the first third of the book, and I wish that he had made more progress in his quest by the end. But it was really well written, with original concepts and fun characters, so I probably will read the sequel. Just not for a little bit. Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I am in love with this world. And I will admit that I did watch the show first, and I am actually really glad I did. It helped me to have a visual in mind for the characters, for the cities, for all of the places that they go, which is helpful because there's a lot of them. My only criticism that pales in comparison to my love for this book is that we only know a situation is frightening when the females of the group start to whimper or quiver or cry. I know that it's difficult to convey fear or terrifying situations through text alone, but I would have appreciated more imagery and less reliance on the temperament of women. So the next one is kind of a cop-out. I was doing some yard work and needed something to listen to, and Raya and the Last Dragon was available and ready to download on Libby. So I did it. I don't think I'd do it again, but I did it. It was literally just the script from the movie with a couple added word descriptions. Very basic. Castle of Refuge by Melanie Dickerson. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend this book. Do not read. Do not pass go. Just stop. This was a complete facepalm, in my opinion. The general plot wasn't bad, but the writing and the voice was abysmal. In this book, we get phrases like, "she does not deserve bad things." We get repetitive plot devices. We get endless romanticizing about "I must protect her" over and over. We get plot holes filled by the character having a bad feeling, going out to search for no apparent reason. In addition, the antagonist just isn't believable and is founded in fancy rather than research. It could have been really cool if she actually had a mental illness or some sort of researched character flaw, like narcissism, things like that, and used those research to really buff out her interactions. Instead, she just kept spouting ridiculous threats, and we're somehow supposed to believe that she got a giant henchman to follow her through the country while she was living at a nunnery, and that she somehow had the know-how to gather all of the supplies needed to survive in the forest, even though she grew up in a noble family. And then she also posed enough threat to warrant an entire garrison out searching for her without being found, and the list of implausibilities just goes on. So just don't read this book. I read The Tudors Daughter by Julie Klassen literally the day after Castle of Refuge, and I really liked it. I'm not sure how much of that is an unbiased opinion and how much of it is just me being very glad it's not another dud book, but regardless, I liked it. It is the perfect combination and marriage of Jane Eyre and Jane Austen, and it gives you all of the wonderful, warm, fuzzy era feelings. It had a great brooding romance, and the secrets and mysteries just kept revealing and revealing during the last act of the book. I definitely would recommend reading The Tudors Daughter. Enchanted by Gail, Carson, LEvine is one of my go-to feel happy books. You know, sometimes you need to read something that you just know you love. Something that transports you out of your head and into a new magical world. And for me, that is this book. It is 100% better than the movie, and everything about it is just enchanting. The most recent book that I finished is The Outlaws of Sherwood by McKinley, and I accidentally checked this one out on accident. I meant to check out the original Robin Hood and got this one instead, and I'm not disappointed. I do love McKinley, and Libby probably knew that because I've checked out her books before and recommended her first. I've loved everything I've read by her, and this is no exception. I finished the whole book happily, and let me just say, if the original is not as good as this, I will be disappointed. Although, it was just a little too happily ever after at the end, in my opinion. It's okay to let some of the characters not be happy at the end, but meh. It's based on a fable. Currently, I am reading Midnight in Chernobyl, which is definitely a landmark moment in our history that I actually never learned about in school. We always started with the Mesopotamian era and worked our way forwards, and then it always got to the point where we'd get through World War II, and then the last 2 weeks of school quickly cover Korea, Vietnam, 9/11, done. I missed out frequently on the Civil War. I didn't know almost anything about civil rights movement until I started researching it on my own. Anything about the original Iraq War, the Cold War with Chernobyl, and the genocides in Rwanda, and all of these things in modern history that I'm just forcing myself to go back and learn by myself. Everyone should know these things, and it's a shame that I don't. Anyways, I definitely think Midnight in Chernobyl classifies as an adventure because these people literally were choosing to stay in heavy radiation zones to try and put out a disaster. And if this was happening in a science fiction book, we would call that an adventurous kind of a thing. Also, the rest of the world trying to figure out how to get through Russia's yellow tape and secrecy, that's an adventure of its own. So that is my October update. Hopefully I get a couple more books in by the end of the year so I can leave on a happy note, and we will see you next time.
Hey, hello, this is my video. I'll tell you about all the great dog toys. This one's for great. Yep, always have a toy in your mouth. This is Moo's Dog Toy Review, signing off.